Hey there, it's PK Beats. I'm done making Deltarune Chapter 2 my whole personality, and I'm back to make more videos. Let's just hop into the meat and potatoes of this. Ooh, what's this? Why did I have to say that? It gives me a prompt regarding a visual glitch with Cloud and Mario's cape. Normally when Cloud gets his limit, he has this blue effect surrounding his character, obviously. And when the limit goes away, so does the blue glow. However, if you have Cloud gain limit by being caped by Mario, and if you don't move at all as Cloud until limit naturally goes away, you'll notice that he still has the blue effect around him, even though limit is completely gone. Unfortunately, his movement speed is the same as normal, and his special attacks are also their normal variants, which is slightly disappointing, but still, he's glowing blue. Now there's a few things I want to show off about this. First is how exactly it works. See, all that's needed is for Mario's cape to be the move that gets him his limit, so Cloud can charge everything before that final hit. And if Cloud moves at all during the wait, even this extremely small step forward, the blue effect just won't stick around. Now he can be moved while waiting for the limit to go away by a third party, and it'll still work, but if he's attacked while waiting, it won't. So it's a bit finicky. Also, I tried this with Mii Sword Fighter's down special that functions basically identical to Mario's cape, and it still works for them, which makes sense. Now you may notice that when Cloud charges another limit after doing this glitch once, the blue aura is a bit more intense than usual. So I got the idea of trying to stack the glitch's effect. So here's what it looks like once, then after 5 times, and now after 10 times. It is noticeably more chaotic in there. But of course I wanted to try even more, and here's what it looks like after 25 times stacking the effect. It's starting to get to the point where it's hard to notice any more changes, and yet after 25 stacks I didn't notice the game's performance take any hit. So finally I decided to go to 50 stacks to see what happens, and still there's no game crash, no major performance issue from what I saw, and there wasn't even a noticeable change in how crazy the effect is. I was a bit disappointed that this didn't fry my game, but it also makes sense considering how many visual effects the game is used to having on screen at a time anyways. I mean, I'm sure if I did this with like 7 different Clouds 100 times each, the game might struggle, but that's not really something I can test right now. So for the time being, I'll just appreciate how absolutely crazy Cloud's Ultra Aura effect looks. Now for some other tests. Changing Cloud's size does not ruin the stack effect. I've stacked it 5 times here for information. No other body changing item that I test seemed to ruin it either, which kinda makes sense. And I was curious if the damage dealt from your limit specials increased if you'd done it stacked like this, but no, the damage was identical. So really this is purely just a visual glitch, but it's still pretty cool looking. Okay, this next one's actually pretty funny, but Kirby Killua gives me a prompt regarding Peach and Daisy's in-game tips. That is, for any tips regarding Toad, for Peach's tip, for Toad's appearance in her grab, the game uses the pronouns he and such, which is pretty normal. This is also the case for Peach's move list in training mode. Toad is very properly addressed as his own character, because you know, he is. However, if you go into Daisy's tips or move list, Toad is regarded solely as an it, with vocabulary suggesting he's an object, like saying the Toad or a Toad. This means one of 2 things. Either the Toads with red spotted heads are the only ones who are actually considered alive, and the blue spotted ones are not, or Daisy is being problematic, and the Toads in Daisy's kingdom are treated as property rather than citizens. Either way, the lore implications here are palpable. Next up, Rockman on Twitter made a post of a very hysterically unfortunate tech you can use against Ness. Super quick tangent before getting into that, but I decided to take this opportunity to see, and yes, unfortunately it seems that the triple jump glitch I covered in the past is gone. So that's unfortunate, but also expected. Anyways, you may notice that typically when the TNT hits someone, there's a big old zoom in effect, like there is for quite a few other attacks in this game. What makes Steve's TNT special is that this is a zoom in that can be caused by himself, meaning you can initiate it in a 1v1 without having to actually hit the opponent. Why is this important? Well, for Ness's and Lucas's recovery, it requires you to angle PK Thunder into yourself, of course. But speaking as a Lucas and Ness co-main, this action of angling and timing PK Thunder is mostly muscle memory. So what if you could cause a temporary pause in the game? As you may expect, yes, this can very easily mess with the timing necessary to recover with PK Thunder, which is just so unfortunate, but it definitely works. Of course, it's not foolproof. If the opponent sees it coming, they can simply delay their PK Thunder movements and continue after the slowdown. Also, it just doesn't seem to work against CPUs at all, which makes perfect sense, yeah. But the success rate against real players seems to be pretty high, especially considering how in the heat of battle, muscle memory for these types of things is definitely going to take over. So having this little wrench in the gears can be really effective. But it's important to point out that this is a trade. You've got to deal damage to yourself to get this to happen, and if you're at even somewhat high percents, this can come at the cost of a stock. Now, if you're confident that you'll be able to mess up their recovery, this trade-off might be worth it. But really, it'd just be better to not take any damage. Some of you might be asking, why not just use a pressure plate or a minecart? And the reason is because these ways of setting off the TNT don't cause a slowdown or a zoom in. But Yanni actually posted a reply showing off a setup that does cause a zoom in without taking any damage. It looks something like this. Basically, you're running into the TNT with a minecart to initiate it being set off, and then you're getting out of the minecart so that it gets hit a second time and then gets fully set off. Because you place the block here, you bonk your head the moment you jump out of the minecart, allowing you to shield just before the explosion, and for whatever reason, all of this together allows the zoom in to still happen. There's probably more layers of mechanics going on here than Steve has pixels on his model, especially considering how weird TNT is regarding whether or not it zooms in. But yeah, thanks to Yanni for showing this off. He's definitely way better at Steve than probably most people actually. Now there are still some downsides with this setup, mostly in that timing for when the TNT gets set off is slightly less lenient compared to just simply charging a down smash, and there's definitely just much more room for error. But considering you don't take damage is really great to keep in mind, both as a Steve player and as a Ness and Lucas player trying to recover. Alright, to make up for this attack on Ness, here's a fun little fact by Syrup regarding Ness's PSI Magnet versus Pichu. PSI Magnet has set knockback, meaning it does the same knockback range no matter what a character's percent is. What this means is that the variance in knockback can only come through other variables. Note that Jigglypuff is the second lightest character in the game with a weight of 68. Now if we go to Pichu, the lightest character with a weight of 62, when you use Aerial PSI Magnet, he gets put into Tumble, and thus put into a tech situation. This may seem pretty small, but being put into a tumble can lead to a lot of things, especially if they missed a tech, which can lead to crazy jab lock combos. Of course, I'm not actually going to comment on how impactful this is, I'm assuming not much, but I think it's a pretty interesting note as this makes the functionality of Aerial PSI Magnet slightly different, for better or worse. Alright, actually enough useful tech, let's move on. Aza gives me a tweet regarding a potential difference between male and female Robin. First, I need to know that this is not the first time I've seen or been told about this, but this is the tweet that made me want to talk about it here. So here's the setup. You need Robin in Mr. Game & Watch, and you need to be crouching as Game & Watch. Notice his animation here, how he bobs up and down. This is very important for this. Now, if you walk into Game & Watch until you're as naturally close to him as possible, and grab. As male Robin, doing this for the front on the upwards bounce lets you grab him. And if you do it from behind on either the upwards bounce or the downwards bounce, you'll still grab him. But if you do it from the downwards bounce from the front, Robin's grab will miss. Very consistently too. I actually don't think I ever got a standing grab as Robin like this, no matter what. And this is true if we mirror the positions, and whether or not Robin's holding his Levin sword. So Robin will not grab Mr. Game & Watch while standing if it's done from the front on Mr. Game & Watch's downward bounce. Now going to female Robin, she's able to successfully grab in both situations from behind, the front on the upwards bounce, and the front from the downwards bounce. Consistently. It's not 100% consistent, sometimes for whatever reason she does fail to grab, but in my testing it was far more common for her to successfully grab here, while male Robin could just never get it. And again, this is true even if their positions are mirrored and if Robin has her Levin sword. What this all implies is that, I guess very minutely, female Robin's grab ends up being slightly better than male Robin's grab, be it due to the grab's range or simply how their models are arranged. And I feel like the latter explanation is what's happening. So while basically non-existent, it seems like female Robin is slightly better than male Robin here. It's crazy. And lastly for today's video, I've got 3 prompts by the same person, by Examine623. This first one being a follow-up to something from the last video. Just as a super quick recap, in that video we talked about how Link's ancient arrow interacts strangely to characters who are buried. In that video we discovered that specifically at 730% against Mario, the ancient arrow stops acting weird. Examine points out how this is because the ancient arrow consists of 2 hits, which we can see here on the combo counter. One deals no damage and very small amounts of knockback, and the second is the normal hit. If you plug in knockback values for that first hit of the move against Mario at specifically 730%, we can see that the knockback just barely exceeds 90. And in Smash Ultimate specifically, the amount of knockback units needed to unbury an opponent is 90. So yes, the reason why the knockback of the ancient arrow becomes normal specifically at 730% for Mario is because the first hit's knockback finally allows the character to be unburied, negating the effect. Next, Examine mentioned a funny fact regarding the first hit of Sheik's pummel. If you slow down the game a ton and grab as Sheik, buffering a pummel, you might notice that the very first hit just completely misses. This only happens if you input it for the first possible frame of the grab. and if you do it the following frame, it'll connect just fine. And you can actually notice this if you try it when playing the game in even a slightly slower speed. The first pummel will completely whiff, and very quickly after will come the next pummel. But for 3 reasons this doesn't really mean anything in practicality. One being that due to hit stun and whatnot, the overall speed and damage output of the pummels doesn't really change based on whether or not the first pummel hits. 2 being that I couldn't actually get this to happen at all in normal game speeds, from what I tried. So it practically just doesn't happen anyways. And 3 being that this doesn't work against the whole cast, and frankly I did not feel like testing this with every single character in the game. But as you can see here, this does not happen with Samus. So this is just triply impractical, just how I like it. Still funny to think about. And lastly for this video, Examiny mentions a fact regarding the mechanic with spikes. Now, I'm not going to go too super in depth about this mechanic since there's still aspects I don't understand entirely, but for the common viewer out there, have you ever felt like you've been KO'd from a spike before reaching the bottom blast zone? Ike here is a good example. His up special drags Jigglypuff down and they both get KO'd at around the same time, but if you pay attention to the minimap here, you'll see that Jigglypuff is quite a bit higher than Ike, definitely not near the blast zone, and yet still gets KO'd at the same time. There's way more examples of this, but in general it seems that there's this mechanic where spikes can cause players to almost be pulled into the blast zone way earlier than normal, perhaps to make suicide spikes and such way more effective. A very interesting scenario that shows how weird this can be is the one with Greninja and Fox. If Fox has 35% and is hanging from the ledge here, and a Greninja down nears him, he dies. I spam jump and all of that, but no inputs come out. Fox is assuredly KO'd. And if we pay attention to the minimap, we can see that he gets KO'd way above the blast zone. But if I raise the percent up to 60 and do the same thing, all of a sudden my jump input is actually able to come out and I'm able to recover just fine. Now I do start getting KO'd again at like 65% since I guess the knockback here is enough to just normally KO, but at around 50 to 60%, Fox starts going into tumble after being spiked, which I guess just removes that mechanic where you get KO'd way above the blast zone, and thus he survives. I think the fact that a scenario that KOs Fox at 35% can then not KO him at 60% is so blatantly counterintuitive that it's a really good example of how broken some of the mechanics in this game are. And it's really interesting, so thank you Examiny for the fun prompts. And I think that's it for today's video. I'd like to thank my gorgeous Patreon Skully, Sashanks, Burbo, Hobo, Niklz, Raighne, 700, TheRealFxdeYT, BG, Gameplay, Feurolant, Keckothedragon, Nestor Franco, blizwald, DanishToast, Gabrielle, Gaby, Jigs, North2043, RustyRantsYT, sadasda, Stan, LOONA, Sylvi, wingedcatgirl, and Yatta Ze. Okay, before we go into my rambling of whatever, I kinda wanted to point out how almost every prompt in this video that I covered came from Twitter. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. Tagging me on Twitter and including video footage or even just a screenshot is probably the single most effective way to submit facts or questions to me. I see them immediately since I use Twitter more than I'd like to admit, and they're usually easier to swallow or organize if there's a video there too. So yeah, with the fact submissions form gone for now, while you can comment on YouTube still, I highly recommend just tagging me on Twitter if you want me to see whatever it is you're talking about. In its own post too, not DMs. I like attention, so I don't mind if I get bombarded with notifications, so please feel free to do that. Anyway, so that Nintendo Direct happened though a while back. I don't have many huge thoughts on it since I'm not really a huge gamer nowadays if I'm being honest. The thing probably most related to me from that Direct was probably the reveal of Deltarune Chapter 2 on the Switch. The Animal Crossing Direct announcement has piqued my curiosity since that sort of implies that the update they're going to be talking about will be like kinda substantial. A part of me still wants to get back into that game, but I think it'll be a little bit longer until they do that. And obviously the reveal of a Smash presentation in a handful of days. I think I'll definitely be streaming that on the channel. This is going to be the final Smash presentation in like a very long time, I might even release a discussion video after that. And they're really hyping up how it's the final finale of finality. It's going to be big, definitely look out for that. And then obviously as soon as the character gets released, whenever that is, I'll be making random facts videos dedicated around them, as usual. Last time for something like that too. I gotta say, I've been enjoying the memes that came from the Direct as well. Well, with those voice actor choices for the Mario movie and how the Smash presentation is on the same day as the Nick All-Star game. It's just funny, I feel no reason to interpret it any further than just being funny. Anyhow, thanks a billion for watching the video, keep up the good work, stay casual, and I'll see y'all later.